Right, we now come to business questions. Shall I leave the House?
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. Will the Leader of the House... Touché, Mr Speaker. Thank you very much indeed. Will the Leader of the House give us the forthcoming business?
Leader!
The gorgeous and brilliant Mr Speaker, I shall. The business for the week commencing the 3rd of March includes Monday the 3rd of March, remaining stages of the Finance Bill. Tuesday the 4th of March, consideration of an allocation of time motion, followed by all stages of the Church of Scotland Lord High Commissioner Bill. Wednesday the 5th of March, Estimates Day, first allotted day. There will be debates on estimates relating to the Department for Health and Social Care, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office and the Department for Business and Trade. At 7 p.m, the House will be asked to agree all outstanding estimates. Thursday the 6th of March, proceedings on the Supply and Appropriation, Anticipation and Adjustments Bill, followed by general debate on International Women's Day, followed by debate on a motion on political finance rules. The subjects for these debates were determined by the Backbench Business Committee. Friday the 7th of March, private members' bills. The provisional business for the week commencing the 10th of March will include Monday the 10th of March, second reading of the Crime and Policing Bill. Tuesday the 11th of March, remaining stages of the Employment Rights Bill, Day 1. Wednesday the 12th of March, remaining stages of Employment Rights Bill, Day 2. Thursday the 13th of March, business to be determined by the Backbench Business Committee. And Friday the 14th of March, private members' bills.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Speaker, I'm not quite sure what mental obfuscation is filling my head this morning, Mr Speaker, but let me thank you again. Mr Speaker, it is my happy task to open by saying that today sees the retirement of Dawn, a stalwart of the tea room. I'm sure I speak for the whole House in wishing her a very happy retirement. But on a very different note, this week also marks the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We wish, I know, the Prime Minister every success in his meetings at the White House today. As you will know, Mr Speaker, the government has come in for some fairly punishing criticism from me at the dispatch box in recent months, and rightly so. It came to power loudly advertising its virtue and careful planning. But instead, as the House will know, we have seen a series of entirely avoidable resignations, blunders and mishaps. The government has talked about growth, but its decisions have managed to reduce the Bank of England's forecast from 2% to 0.75% growth for this year. Little wonder, that is, when one considers the £25 billion increase in national insurance contributions and the imposition of an employment rights bill with an upfront cost estimated at £5 billion, among much else. Most bizarre of all has been the lack of foresight and financial planning. The Chancellor talked grandly in her May's lecture last year about securonomics, whatever that is, and the importance of economic security. But as many commentators have noticed, her fiscal rules and other decisions have left her very little room for manoeuvre. After all, it was obvious in the autumn that there could be tariffs on trade, with, as ministers have since acknowledged, also an inevitable rise in defence spending. It's almost as though Labour never imagined, or perhaps never wanted to believe, that President Trump would be re-elected. As a result, the government may be forced to have a mini-budget next month and then a spending review which has been so delayed that the government will have gone a full year from its election without having any settled spending plans. Meanwhile, it prefers to import oil and gas from abroad rather than use less expensive domestic energy supplies. Forget securonomics. This is a recipe for insecurity as well as increasing carbon emissions. However, it is important to give credit where credit's due, Mr Speaker. I reported in December that genuine signs of reality were starting to break through in the government's so-called plan for change. The Prime Minister said there, in 2010, the incoming government inherited public finances in desperate need of repair. He said that the UK needed a profound cultural shift away from a declinist mentality which has become comfortable with failure. And finally, and most notably, he said, we cannot tax our way to prosperity or spend our way to better public services. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was right on all three counts, and he is right now to increase defence spending. It is not untrue to say that he is visibly becoming more conservative before our eyes. Unfortunately, of course, the real numbers in the defence statement were in fact half what he claimed, as the Institute for Fiscal Studies quickly made clear. And the statement was insulting in other ways to this House, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to say. It appears to have been leaked to the media, who ran the headline before the Prime Minister had even stood up. Perish the thought that it was deliberately redacted so that MPs would be kept in the dark and could not hold the government to account. The Prime Minister has emphasised all the planning that was involved in this decision, but even so, he was repeatedly unable to answer the simple yes or no question whether funding for the Chagos Islands deal was included in this total. And what is worse, in his statement, he tried to aggregate the intelligence services budget in with the defence budget. That is grossly misleading, because these budgets are and have long been kept separate. And what is worse still, the Prime Minister's claim that the combination of the two budgets would be 2.6% of GDP seems to imply a cut, not a rise, in the budget for the intelligence services, which currently stands at over 0.15%. This cannot be correct. Even if the leader cannot address this question now, I'd be grateful if she could write to me with the details in order to answer it for the record and for the benefit of this House.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I also welcome the retirement of Dawn from the tea room and wish her well. And can I also start by remarking on what an excellent couple of 10-minute rule bills we've had this week. First of all, from the honourable gentleman, the shadow leader, who brought forward a very important bill on cleaning up the River Wye, which I know is of real importance to his constituents, but also a 10-minute rule bill from my brilliant PPS, the member for West Bromwich, who introduced a bill to crack down on ghost car number plates, a very important issue. So they're in good company with each other this week, Mr. Speaker. But as the Prime Minister attends a very important meeting with President Trump today, I know that he has the support of the whole House behind him in the national interest. The peace and security we have enjoyed in recent generations has shifted significantly in the last few years, not least because of Russian aggression and their illegal invasion of Ukraine. The Prime Minister has shown determined leadership on the world stage to ensure that our national security is protected in the long term. The whole House has also come together once again this week to show our unity and strength in supporting Ukraine. 3 years since Russia's full-scale illegal invasion of Ukraine, we stand in solidarity. We support their bravery, their people, their democratically elected president, and we stand firm for their sovereignty and their lasting security, free from threats from Russia. The cross-party display, unity on display this week, and I know will be on display again this afternoon, shows this House at its best and really gives the Prime Minister great strength in his negotiations and discussions. And as the honourable gentleman said, the Prime Minister also this week announced to Parliament first that in order to respond to the changing and growing threats that we face, defence spending will increase to 2.5% of GDP by 2027 and grow to 3% in the next Parliament. This marks the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, going further than commitments we made in our manifesto. And it's not just vital for our own capabilities, but for maintaining peace and security beyond our shores. Other European countries must now also step up at this crucial juncture. And I was actually really pleased to see that the announcement to 2.5 was universally welcomed across this House. He yet again raises the government's economic record, but let's have a look at that record, shall we, once again. Interest rates are down 3 times in a row, mortgage rates are also going down, wages are going up, and from the 1st of April, the lowest paid will receive a big pay rise. He might not be interested in pay and workers' dignity and security, but this party is, and we're not ashamed to say so. And he talks about energy prices, and he will know that this country, under his government, was uniquely and specifically exposed to global energy markets. And the only way for us to get lower bills in the long term, sustainable lower bills, is to make sure that we've got clean energy generated in this country. And that's what this government is embarking on doing. And he wants to, I think, unfortunately, open up a difference on defence spending. But I just would gently remind him that the last time the government spent 2.5% on defence spending was under the last Labour government. His government made promise after promise on the never, never. It never happened, and it wasn't a credible plan. So I would just gently remind him of that. But look, Mr. Speaker, it's another week of business questions, and another week that the shadow leader fails to say anything supportive about his own leader. You know, I keep giving him ample opportunity to do so at these sessions each week. I thought he might want to highlight some of the recent speeches and interventions she's made recently, given that they've had so little coverage. She advised us to stop hiding behind vapid statements. I'm not sure that it's us making vapid statements, Mr. Speaker. I think it might be herself. But was he not taken with her claim that only, and I quote, the Conservatives are the guardians of Western civilisation? I know he takes his history very seriously, so what does he make of that claim? And did he not want to take the opportunity today, Mr. Speaker, to restate her claim that the Prime Minister's big moves this week were all down to a letter he received from the Leader of the Opposition? Or does he realise, like the rest of us, that this is obviously absurd? And what about her suggestion that her leadership stint is akin to that of Donald Trump in his second term? I mean, come on. I think we can all see, can't we, that it's not quite going the way that they'd hoped for. And I'm not sure if the honourable gentleman is a card player or not, but I'm sure he can agree with me. They're not really holding the trump card. It's more of a busted flush.
Rachael Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unaccountable power carries significant risk. We see it in this place, across our public services, and when it's in the NHS, it can lead to the death of patients. The complaint systems within the NHS are not functioning. They're defensive and not trying to solve the issues. Can we have a debate about NHS complaints to keep our constituents safe?
Yeah. Leader.
Well, can I thank her for raising this important matter? And I'm sure as constituency MPs, we all recognise the point that she's made. I have heard the Health Secretary speak about these issues many times, and I know he is committed to ensuring that the NHS is accountable, is responsive, and does take complaints very seriously, and doesn't try to, in any way, cover up or hide problems that it's got within its service.
Goldman, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Climate Change Committee has published advice in its 7th carbon budget, which sets out a new pathway to decarbonisation, including on how the UK can meet the legally binding target of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. The Climate Change Committee has already reported that the UK is behind in meeting its climate targets, and it has criticised the government's decisions to go ahead with the coal mine in Cumbria and oil and gas fields in the North Sea. On top of that, Ofgem has taken the decision to increase the cap for the price of energy bills by 6.4% in April 2025, higher than the 5% increase that even those in the sector had expected. This is the third increase since October 2024. The latest price rise means households will be forced to pay about £600 a year more for their gas and electricity than before Russia's invasion of Ukraine 3 years ago. Liberal Democrats have been gravely concerned about the government's delays to tackle poorly insulated homes over this winter and to implement the new Future Homes Standard. As a result, an estimated 6 million households are still in fuel poverty. It's clear that to tackle the joint issues of climate change and ever-increasing energy prices, the government must be bold. The Liberal Democrats want to see a 10-year emergency upgrade programme to make homes warmer and cheaper to heat, including free insulation and heat pumps for those on low incomes. Will the Leader of the House grant a debate in government time to discuss what more can be done to support those struggling to stay warm in a way that also supports decarbonisation?
Leader.
Well, can I thank her for that important question and contribution? I know that she and her party take this issue as seriously as the government does, and I welcome her raising it here today. She's absolutely right that energy bills and the soaring costs of energy we've seen over recent years are a huge worry to people and are unaffordable for many. And that's why we've got a mission to become a clean energy superpower by 2030, which will not only help to keep bills lower for longer, but drive growth and tackle the climate crisis. She will know, I'm sure, that this country was particularly and uniquely exposed to global energy prices, and that's still affecting the energy price cap this year. And I'm sure she will agree with me that the only way to tackle this is to ensure that we've got homegrown, cheaper, renewable power, and that we reduce demand, as she says, by better insulation of our homes, which accounts for a huge amount of our energy use. So household energy prices are lower than they were last year, but we need to go further and faster. We have announced an extension of the Warm Home Scheme this year, an extra £150 for nearly 3 million additional people, and we've committed £3.4 billion over the next 3 years for home insulation, but we will continue to go further and faster, and I will ensure that she and the House are kept updated.
Conlon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thames water pipe left thousands of my constituents in Leigh, Crystal Palace and Penge without water for up to 5 days. The response from Thames Water has been completely unacceptable. They only put one bottled water station in up to an hour's away for some residents. They failed to deliver water to people on the Priority Services Register, and their complete lack of communication has left my constituents in the dark. And to make matters worse, the only thing they communicated effectively to residents that week was an increase in water bills. I have called on Thames Water to give me clear answers on the compensation they will pay my constituents. Will the Leader of the House join me in urging Thames Water to provide clarity on this and agree to changes to a debate on changes to the compensation scheme?
Leader.
Well, can I thank him for that question? I think welcome him to his first outing at business questions. He's very welcome, but he raises some very serious issues about the performance and the services provided by Thames Water that do get raised with me many times in these sessions and elsewhere in this House. And frankly, some of their actions have been unacceptable, and they need to be brought to account. That's one of the reasons why we've brought in the Water Special Measures Bill, but we've also got an independent commission on water governance looking at these issues at the moment, and I will ensure that he and the House are kept fully up to date.
Bob Blackman, Chair of the Backbench Committee.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Leader for announcing the business. We had 11 applications covering 9 different departments for the Estimates Day debates, and all of them could have been chosen, but we had the difficult choice of choosing 3. So those that we weren't able to accommodate, we were going to try and accommodate when we have the main estimates in May. And I'd ask the Leader to try and facilitate the date of those Estimates Day debates as early as possible so that we can facilitate those happening. In addition to the business that the Leader's announced, on Thursday the 13th of March in the Chamber there'll be a debate on future of farming, followed by a debate on mental health support in educational settings. On Thursday the 20th of March, if we're given that date, there'll be a debate on knife crime amongst children and young people, followed by a debate on coastal communities. In Westminster Hall on Tuesday the 4th, there'll be a debate on cultural heritage of market towns, and on Thursday the 6th, financial sustainability and governance of English football, followed by a debate on ambulance service response times. And on the Tuesday the 11th of March, a debate in Westminster Hall on governance of English rugby union, and on Thursday the 13th, a debate on educational opportunities for young carers. Now, Mr Speaker, yesterday the International Atomic Energy Authority announced the fact that Iran is getting very, very close to having enriched uranium which will enable them to have an atomic weapon. Now, obviously, this is a direct threat to peace in the Middle East and to British interests across the world. Now, I know, obviously, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary are in the United States at the moment. I hope that we can have a statement next week on action the government is going to take to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, and that, if necessary, snapback arrangements are put in place with the necessary implication of ensuring that they do not acquire those nuclear weapons that will destabilise the entirety of the Middle East and beyond.
Leader.
Well, first of all, can I thank the Chair of the Backbench Business Committee for announcing a number of what I know will be widely welcome debates. They are many issues that get raised with me in these sessions, so I'm really glad that his committee has accommodated those. Although I would say that I'm sure Mr Speaker would be a lot happier with a debate on rugby league rather than rugby union, so perhaps he could bear that in mind next time. But he raises a very important issue of the continued threat that we face, not just in this country, but to near neighbours and around the world by Iran and its increasing aggression and actions. The government is taking this very seriously and taking actions, and there will be, I'm hoping, a statement coming forward on this matter imminently, and I'll let him know.
Just to warn the House, this will finish at 12:25. I don't want a repeat of last week, where members of Parliament was complaining to the front office. It is not acceptable. My deputies are doing a job. I don't expect complaints today. So you're aware of the time. Help each other. Let's have a good example. Leigh, Ingham.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In my constituency of Stafford, Eccleshall and the Villagers, residents of Parkside and Marston Grange are at a complete standstill. Years of roadworks have completely overwhelmed their roads. Constituents' children can't get to school safely because of dangerous crossings, and businesses are losing business daily. They've been told that they were going to finish this spring, then the summer, and now autumn. I'm not the first Staffordshire MP to raise this. The lack of adequate communication from Staffordshire County Council. The Right Honourable Member for Tamworth, the Honourable Member for Tamworth raised it just before recess. But please can I request a statement on what steps the government is taking to hold councils like mine to account who refuse to communicate with their residents?
Leader.
Well, absolutely. Her friend and colleague did raise this with me before recess, and as I said then, and I'll say again to her, when these kind of roadworks that are constantly delayed aren't delivered, they can have a huge impact on local people, local businesses, schools, hospitals and others. And I really would just reiterate what I said before, that Staffordshire County Council are clearly making a mess of this issue. They need to get a grip, get it sorted, get these roadworks cleared so that businesses and people in her constituent can get back to the work.
Sir Roger Gale.
I'm most grateful, Mr Speaker. I understand that today the Home Secretary is visiting Calais. I hope that she will see not just the beaches from which illegal immigrants depart for the United Kingdom, but also that she will visit the facility that I saw myself a week ago today with Michael Herne and Jack Valpy from the BBC South East, where we discovered some 800 migrants from Sudan living in total squalor with no sanitation of any kind. I hope that the Home Secretary will have raised this with the Mayor of Calais, with the Calais Deputy, and also with her counterpart, the Interior Minister for France. Would the Leader of the House, and I appreciate that Monday is likely to be a busy day when the Prime Minister returns from Washington, Mr Speaker, but would the Leader of the House ask the Home Secretary to come to the House at the earliest opportunity to make a statement upon what she has found?
Leader.
Well, can I thank him for raising that? And he's absolutely right. You know, the situation that we face with the small boats crossing continues to be intolerable in many regards, and this country cannot sustain what we are seeing, and what is there in Calais and the steps that are being taken or not, are not acceptable either. That's why we've brought forward the Borders Bill. It's why we're working very closely with France, not just on what's happening in Calais, but to make sure that further upstream those migrants are not arriving in Calais and then onto these shores in the first place. He makes a very good point about making sure that the House is kept up to date, which the Home Secretary I know takes incredibly seriously, and she is very forthcoming on these matters, but I will certainly make sure she's heard that today.
Catherine Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I really enjoyed having a kickabout with Derby County women and the Sports Minister at our fantastic new football facilities at the Derby Racecourse Hub. Next week, it will host 14 Derby schools who are taking part in the biggest ever football session aimed at expanding football opportunities for girls across the country. Does the Leader of the House agree with me that women's football is going from strength to strength? And could we have a debate about supporting grassroots football for women and girls?
Absolutely. Women's football is going from strength to strength, and what we saw from the Lionesses in recent years has inspired a whole new generation, and it's great to hear what's happening at Derby Racecourse and all in her constituents, and I'm keen to support her in that. I'm not a great player of football myself, although I'm a pretty good tackler, I think, in some regards, but I think this would make a very good topic for a debate.
Wera Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I recently visited Bath Roman Boxing Gym, and anybody who wants to see my amazing right-hand swing can watch it on social media. But more seriously, and in connection with the question that she has just answered, how can we support these community organisations like Bath Boxing Gym, who provide incredible opportunities for young people to compete internationally and nationally, but also provide very important diversionary activities? Can we have a debate in government time on all these activities that are so powerful in our communities?
Well, I will take a look at her left hook, right hook. I don't know which-handed she is. I'm sure she's got a powerful one there, packing a punch. But look, she makes a really good point. I know from my own constituency how important boxing clubs and sport activities are in general. That's why this government is first of all committed to a curriculum review to make sure that schools and organisations like Bath Boxing Club are able to provide young people with these kind of opportunities. It's also why we're giving local government the biggest boost to funding it's had in many years, because of course many of these organisations rely on local government funding. But she's absolutely right. We need to do more to ensure that young people like hers in her constituency have opportunity to sport, culture and other activities, and I'm sure it would make a good topic for debate.
Just Athwal.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. When the Right Honourable Member for Richmond and Northallerton was Chancellor, he said he had diverted public money away from deprived urban areas. In Ilford South, our local Redbridge Council has been ranked amongst the most cost-effective council in the country, and yet my neighbours are still suffering of the inequality of the politically motivated Conservative funding formula. Would the Leader of the House consider a debate on local government funding formulas to ensure that all areas receive their fair share of funding to deliver for local people?
Leader.
Well, he's absolutely right. The previous government did change the funding formula, and it did take funding away from some of the high needs local authorities in our country. That's why we're looking again at those funding formulas. That's why we'll be doing 3-year settlements for local government, and it's why we've given local government the biggest funding boost it's had for many years. But we need to go further on these matters, and that's why it's important that we do so. We do regularly have debates on local government funding, but I'll make sure there is one coming up.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. That was a pleasant surprise after my brief admonishment. In Suffolk, we're moving towards a unitary council as part of the reforms to local government, and I'd like to put on record my discomfort that our local elections due this year have been postponed. But with the reforms, the danger is that power is going to be taken further away from local residents, and I want to see parish and town councils empowered to take responsibility for problems such as speeding and road safety. So can we have a debate on how we empower towns and villages so they can get things done very directly for local residents?
Leader.
Well, I understand his worry about the delays to elections, which are only for a year, and it's to ensure that we're not having unnecessary elections this year ahead of mayoral elections for in areas like his the year after. I do hear what he is saying, but this is about devolving a huge amount of powers to local areas, and those local areas have to be of a size that they can cope with those powers. I know from my own area in Manchester that really ward by ward that is being felt. The devolution revolution is having a huge positive impact in an area like mine, and I'm sure it will have in his as well.
Adam Joe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just before the recess, thanks to the Backbench Business Committee, I led an excellent debate on coalfield communities. It was subject to a time limit, it was immediately oversubscribed, and I had no time to wind up. So with that in mind, Mr. Speaker, will the leader make time for a debate in government time for us to further unpick how we can secure the investment, seize the opportunities and deliver the change that coalfield communities like mine in Newcastle and Lyme and those up and down our country desperately deserve?
Leader.
Well, he's right. Coalfield communities do make a huge contribution to this country, and this government has supported them very quickly in a number of ways just in the first few months in office. I understand his debate was oversubscribed, and I'm sure there would be a great appetite for a further debate, so I will listen carefully to his question today.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. ADHD assessment waiting times are too long, leaving patients and families in limbo as they are left without crucial treatments alongside existing medication shortages, undermining the right to choose without requiring improvements in local NHS provision of ADHD assessments would be incredibly short-sighted. Will the Leader of the House hold a debate in government time on the crisis in ADHD services and ask her colleagues in the Department of Health to write to me to outline that there will be no deterioration in waiting times in Wokingham and across England?
Can I thank him for raising this matter, which does get raised with me regularly. I'm sure he will appreciate that we inherited a broken system when it came to ADHD assessments, and there are currently unacceptable delays, as he outlines. I understand that NHS England has established a cross-sector task force to look at the ADH service provision, and as soon as that is ready to report and with recommendations, I will of course make sure it comes to this House for proper scrutiny.
And Leigh Midgley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Constituents in Kirby have endured a foul stench from Simmonswood Industrial Estate, which is in West Lancashire, for years, making some physically sick. My constituent, Gina Griffiths, says it's given her child a persistent sore throat, while Joanna Day and her husband are having breathing problems because of the Simmonswood stink. Enforcement from Lancashire County Council and the Environment Agency, who are responsible for this site, has been unacceptable. This is despite repeated efforts by Labour Shevington councillors, us MPs and Knowsley Council. So can we have a debate on tackling lack of enforcement around waste management plants?
Leader.
Well, I'm really disappointed to hear that this awful matter is taking so long to be resolved, despite representations from the Honourable Lady and her colleagues as well. She's absolutely right. The Environment Agency has the powers it needs, and it should take all necessary regulatory steps to make sure that operations like this are complying with permit conditions. And I would encourage them to do so at pace, and I'll certainly write to her with an update.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, farmers from across the UK, including from my Aldridge Brown Hills constituency, were here in London for the NFU conference, and I'm sure many of us saw the very thought-provoking display of toy tractors very close to this place, a very stark reminder that the farm tax could destroy farms and farming futures. Without farmers, of course, there is no food. So I'd like to ask the Leader of the House today, at a time of such global uncertainty, when we should be actively supporting our farmers and not driving them out of production, can we have a debate, please, on the importance of improving and increasing UK food security?
Leader.
Well, this government is very committed to both farming and providing food security. That's why we're investing £5 billion, a huge amount, a record amount, in the farming budget. And the government that she served under underspent the farming budget by 300 million. We've set out a 25-year farming roadmap, which the National Farmers Union has welcomed as long overdue, and we've taken other steps like extending the seasonal worker visa route for 5 more years, which has also been welcomed. I did note that the official opposition, did have an opposition debate this week, and they chose not to make one of those debates on farming, so perhaps you might want to take that up with their own front bench.
That's sharp.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is slightly different to that of a member of York Central, but speaks to the NHS. The Financial Times recently reported there's been a 92% increase of whistleblowing cases since 2015 and 2023, included in the NHS. In my local trust headquarters, which is in my constituency, Mr Speaker, former NHS Trust Chair Dr Max McLean, a decorated police officer, maintains he's been forced to take legal action after being removed from his position at Bradford Teaching Hospitals Trust following his decision to raise concern about governance and patient safety. The Trust argues chairs, non-exec directors and governors are not workers under whistleblowing legislation, potentially leaving them without the same protection as other NHS staff when reporting patient safety governance concerns. Given the serious implications for NHS transparency and accountability, will the government commit to review the issues and provide clarity to the courts and allocate time for Parliament to debate better protections for whistleblowers?
Well, she raises important issues of whistleblowers and how their complaints should be taken very seriously, and I support her and welcome her in that, and I'm sure the whole House does as well. As I said in answer to the previous question, I know that the Health Secretary takes these matters incredibly seriously, and I would just point my honourable friend to the fact that we are bringing forward a duty of candour piece of legislation later this year, which will also support this agenda.
Lisa Small.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. This morning I had the pleasure of attending questions to ministers from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, because I was hoping to highlight 2 really important issues to my constituents. I was wanting to express my gratitude to the team at NK Theatre Arts, who empower young people and help them to amplify their voice at Romilly Forum Theatre. There are worries, though, about the long-term future of the theatre because there's rack in the roof. I also was cheekily seeking a bit of support for my campaign to make Marple Locks a World Heritage Site. But at the end of the question session, many members were left without an opportunity to ask their question. I'm sure the leader agrees with me on the importance of culture, media and sport, both to our constituents and to this House. And I wonder if she'd consider extending the time for future question sessions so more issues can be raised.
Yeah.
Well, can I first of all support her work around the Romilly Theatre? I know that theatre well. I think I went there as a brownie when I was a youngster to see a pantomime, but I know it well, and it's a very good example of a regional theatre. And Marple Locks, are a great tourist attraction to our region as well. I support her in that. She makes a very good point, and in my time as the shadow DCMS Secretary, I felt very strongly about these matters too, and we do keep under constant review the allocation of oral questions with Mr Speaker about the most appropriate division of that, and I'll certainly take on board what she says.
In fairness, I've never been asked. I will give an hour to Culture Media Sport, my personal view, just to say that. In which case, let's see where we can go. Paul War.
Colleagues will be aware that I'm a former journalist and old habits die hard. I have some breaking news to announce. Rochdale has just this morning been announced as Greater Manchester's Town of Culture for 25 and 26. Starting from April, the year of events will celebrate our international reputation as a birthplace of cooperation and also as the home to 35 thriving arts organisations. I know she's a culture vulture, so will the leader congratulate everyone involved in this winning bid and maybe pop up the road to see our magnificently restored town hall and maybe partake of herself the Rochdale Renaissance?
Leader.
Well, I very much look forward to taking up his invitation and absolutely join him in congratulating Rochdale on becoming Greater Manchester's Town of Culture. It's got a fantastic cultural heritage, and I'm sure that he and everybody across the town of Rochdale will really seize this opportunity to showcase what a brilliant town Rochdale is.
David Simmons.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The increased pace of government decision-making in respect of refugee applications is discharging growing numbers of people into the responsibility of local authorities. And on top of that, my constituents in the London Borough of Hillingdon face an additional £1.2 million council tax cost to support Chagossians displaced to the UK by the uncertainty created through the government's stance on the Chagos Islands. So will the leader make available time in government time for a debate of the impact on asylum, refugee and border policy on our local authorities?
Leader.
Well, I would gently say to the honourable gentleman that what this government inherited when it came to the asylum backlog was, it was absolutely shocking. It was appalling. It was a huge backlog which no one could be processed. So more and more being built up and being paid for in asylum hotels, which I know he would have found very unacceptable to his constituents, as I did to mine. And we are taking steps to deal with that backlog. We've got record numbers of returns, which didn't happen under his government. And I am a little confused about quite what he's saying about Chagos. Does he want long-term certainty for the British activity in Chagos, or does he not? Because if he does want long-term certainty, then I'm sure he would welcome and support the plans that we've taken forward to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In South and Eastern Rochford, I've had the pleasure of meeting my constituent, Mark Hughes. Mark kindly shared his experience of terminal diagnosis. Please, would the Leader of the House join me in commending Mark on his hard work in his successful 6 months campaign. This means that those who receive a terminal illness diagnosis of 12 months or less can now have their benefits application fast-tracked. Additionally, will the Leader of the House assist in arranging a meeting with the Department for Work and Pensions and Mark Hughes to discuss the next steps to support anyone with a terminal illness diagnosis?
Well, absolutely. Can I echo his thanks and admiration and support to Mark Hughes for what a brilliant campaign which has now come into effect to ensure that those with a terminal illness do get their benefits fast-tracked and do get that set at 12 months. And absolutely, I will ensure that he gets a meeting or response from the Minister as he asks.
John Glenn. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 4th of February, I met with Janet Williams and Emma Murphy from the National Valproate campaign, In Fact. Following on from that, later that week, the member for Rushcliffe and the members for Washington and Gateshead South, Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweedale raised matters at Business Questions. It has now been a year since the publication of the Patient Safety Commissioner Hughes report, which highlighted the devastating impact of valproate and pelvic mesh on thousands of women and then children. Given my experience on the infected blood compensation scheme, given what I learnt from the member for Kingston, Hull and Cottingham when she was sat here in opposition, please can we have some time to discuss this? The further delays that could occur will cause enormous additional anxiety, but also expense to the taxpayer. We must move on this matter.
Leader.
Well, I do respect his work on the infected blood scheme, and he has a great deal of experience to offer on these matters. He does raise a very important issue that has been raised, as he said, by colleagues with me before recess on the Hughes report and the valproate and pelvic mesh scandal, which I know was a big issue in the last Parliament. I know the Minister has met with families and is considering in great depth the report, and I will absolutely ensure that at the earliest opportunity the House is given a full update on these matters, and I look forward to him from those backbenches as well continuing to raise that with me if that doesn't happen.
Helena Dolan.
Down St Helens Park Road, they are confronted with the sight of a dilapidated London double-decker bus that has been left by the side of the road for years because the local councils have refused to do anything about it. For the residents on St Helens Road, they are forced to live opposite this monstrosity. So will the Leader of the House join me in calling on Hastings Borough Council and East Sussex County Council to knock heads together, grasp the nettle and get this bus moved?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know how unsightly these things can be and how disturbing they can be for those who live around them. So I will absolutely join her calls. I think Hastings Council is run by the Green Party. They're not here today, but perhaps they could pull their finger out and get this bus moved.
Tom Gordon, they were late.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently met with volunteers who run Harrogate competitive festivals for music, speech and drama, a charity that's been going almost 90 years. They have over 250 different classes and categories, 800 entries to their competitions, with over 1,300 children taking part every single year. We've heard how it gives confidence and boosts people's skills and their ability to speak and perform in front of large audiences. They used to receive funding from the local authority, but this has stopped since 2016. I wondered if the Leader of the House would make time in government times for a debate on the importance of the performing arts and how we can support it.
Well, absolutely. I know how important these sorts of festivals are for young people. It gives them an opportunity to perform and to be assessed and to really try out their performing arts skills, like at the Harrogate festival that he describes. And as he says, many are often funded by local government, which has seen their budgets absolutely stripped to the core in recent years. That's why we boosted their funding in the recent budget, and we're looking at 3-year settlements that will give local government obviously the chance to do that, but we're also looking at how we can support culture and the creative curriculum for young people, and I'm sure these are all things he would welcome.
Chris Moore.
Mr. Speaker, in this House we have rightly marked the 3-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and we are all steadfast in our support for the Ukrainian people. Last weekend I spent my morning with Ukrainian refugees settled in my town of Redditch at their regular breakfast event. I spoke with parents and children forced to leave their homes due to fighting and the impact that it has had on their mental health. Would the Leader of the House join me in paying tribute to those Redditch residents that have opened up their homes and offered support and harboured in safety those people who need it the most at their biggest time of need?
Well, absolutely. As we mark the 3-year awful anniversary of the illegal invasion of Ukraine, I think this whole House would agree that the Homes for Ukraine scheme was one of the proudest things I think this country did to contribute to that effort, and I absolutely support the work that he's been doing with Ukrainians in his constituency of Redditch.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the House will recall that on the 23rd of January I came to this House in this very session, and after many months of non-committal communication with government, I raised the tragic case of John Cross, a Bromsgrove pharmacist who very sadly took his own life after complications arising from the COVID vaccine. I'd like to put on the record that John was a pharmacist. He believed in the importance of vaccines. His family believed that he took one for the team, and they've been seeking justice in John's memory. I'm grateful to the Leader of the House for the correspondence that she provided me immediately afterwards. However, contrary to your promise on the floor of this House for a meeting with the Cross family, the correspondence that I've had subsequent that I've engaged in government with has promised only a meeting with me. Now, the Cross family desperately want to meet with government so that they can see justice delivered in John's name. You know, it's disappointing for me to come here, Mr. Speaker. I think it's a little bit embarrassing for the government, and it's frankly cruel for the Cross family to have their anguish drawn out. I believe the Leader of the House to be a very honourable member. I hope that she will agree to a meeting with the Cross family and that she will make this a priority when she leaves this House today.
Well, I am very sorry to hear that he's struggled to get the meeting that I hoped that he would get and that the family of John Cross, I think, deserve to have. So I will absolutely take that forward after this session today, and at the very least I'll meet them myself, but I hope that actually a health minister will meet with them, because I think that would be the most appropriate thing to do.
From folks.
Mr. Speaker, this week I was contacted by a constituent who had received the phone call that every parent dreads. Her son had been hit by a car as he got off the bus on his way home from school at Caldecott School. Fortunately, he was not seriously hurt, and thank goodness that that road is still 20 miles per hour. Even though the council had been asked to review that road, they decided to keep it at 20 miles per hour, which I think is commendable, because otherwise things could have been so much worse. The Undie and Caldecott School community are determined to push for a crossing to be installed on this stretch of road, which of course I will support. But would the Leader of the House agree to a debate on young people's road safety, particularly in areas like entrances to villages where speed limits can suddenly change.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear of her constituent being involved in a road traffic accident. As she says, this is the phone call that any parent would just absolutely dread receiving, but I'm glad to hear that it wasn't as serious as it might have otherwise been. She's absolutely right to use this session to raise issues of speeding, of the need for crossings and other matters in her constituency, and I think this would make a very popular and well-attended topic for debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I visited a local business who expressed their concerns about the PEPR regulations. These are regulations that shift the cost of managing packaging waste from local authorities to producers. This represents yet another burden on businesses at a time when they're facing no end of other increased costs. Could the Leader of the House ensure that the appropriate minister comes to the House and explains what assessment has been made of the impact of these regulations?
Well, I do pride myself, Mr. Speaker, on knowing most things about what the government's doing, but I have to say I'm not that familiar with the PEPR regulations that he describes, but I'll certainly find out about them. But this government, we are taking steps to ensure that we've got a circular economy, that recycling and packaging waste is kept to a minimum. But I know the Minister has been to this House a few times to debate some of these matters, but I will ensure he gets a full detailed response about that.
John Slinger.
Will the Leader join me in paying tribute to the emergency services crews from Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service, Warwickshire Police and West Midlands Ambulance Service, who attended this week a tragic and fatal fire in my constituency of Rugby? Public servants such as these rush towards their fellow citizens in their time of need, and often they rush towards danger, and they show professionalism, compassion, and often bravery, and as such, they deserve our appreciation and continuing support.
Well, absolutely. I'm sorry to hear about the tragic fire in his constituency, and I will absolutely join him in commending the amazing work that our emergency services do, the professionalism, the bravery with which they do it, and putting their own lives at risk in doing so.
I'll be more.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the whole House will want to join me in wishing my constituent, Philip Jackson, a very happy 100th birthday. Amongst the very varied life so far, Philip joined the Royal Army Corps during the Second World War and was involved in the liberalisation of Cherbourg. But perhaps one of the most harrowing contributions of service Philip made during this period was being involved in being one of the very first to enter the notorious Nazi Bergen-Belsen concentration camp when it was liberated in 1945. So can we have a debate in government time to celebrate those from our veteran community who have gone above and beyond throughout their life in the act of peace and freedom for us all?
Well, absolutely. Can I join him in wishing a very happy birthday to Philip Jackson? 100 years, what an amazing 100 years. And he's right to point out that as we enter the 80th anniversary of VE Day and the liberalisation and the freedom that came from those who first went into Auschwitz and other places as well, that we are reminded that that generation are not long with us, and it's good that Philip is still with us and we can still hear the stories and thank him for all the amazing work and life that he's lived.
Leigh Pitcher.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Leader of the House will be surprised that I'm not talking about Doncaster Sheffield Airport today. Shocking. Because I'd like to land some terrific news about primary schools in my area. Firstly, Crooksbury Primary Academy, who have ranked first amongst the schools in Doncaster for their English and Maths results. Secondly, I visited Root Travis School on Monday and heard the children read their letters and absolutely made my heart melt. And thirdly, I'm really, really chuffed to hear that Balchin Mayflower Primary School has been selected as one of the first of the 750 schools to offer breakfast clubs as part of the government's new scheme. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating these outstanding primary schools and acknowledge the significance of the Breakfast Club programme? That's one, the programme. Thank you very much.
Well, absolutely. He still managed to get Doncaster Airport into his question, but can I congratulate him, first of all, on securing an adjournment debate on Doncaster Airport. So he still has the title of Mr Doncaster Airport as far as the House is concerned. But I certainly will join him in congratulating the outstanding work that primary schools in his constituency do, and the new Breakfast Club programme unveiled this week by the Education Secretary.
If we keep the questions pithy, I'll get everybody in. So, to the point, Donald.
Thank you very much. Would the Leader of the House allow time for a debate about the importance of keeping our roads and highways clear of litter and rubbish? I recently spent some time with Ronnie and Darren from Scottish Borders Council, who do a tremendous job emptying bins and keeping the A1 in Berwickshire clean and tidy. They are supported by many volunteers, including Candy Phillip and Alison Curry from the Berwickshire Anti-Litter Group, who spend many hours a week cleaning litter from lay-bys and grass verges. So would the Leader of the House join me in thanking Ronnie, Darren and the volunteers who do this important work, keeping our countryside clean and tidy?
Well, absolutely, I'll join him in congratulating, I think, Ronnie, Darren, Candy and Alison for keeping his countryside safe. And he's absolutely right. It shouldn't be a matter for volunteers to have to deal and tackle with littering. It should be a responsibility of every good citizen to make sure that they don't litter our countryside in the way that they seem to be doing in his.
Stephen Sander.
Deputy Speaker, the Loughborough Rotary Club does brilliant work in my constituency, as I know the Rotary Club does across this country. In my community, they provide over 200 warm coats and over 500 boxes to families being rehomed. So will the Minister please put on record her thanks to the Loughborough Rotary Club in my constituency and Rotary Clubs indeed across the nation?
Absolutely, I will join him in thanking the work of Loughborough Rotary Club and all the Rotary Clubs around the country for the amazing volunteering work that they do, and in his case, supporting people with coats and homeless people.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On Saturday, I joined the first New Bolverden Scouts group for part of their celebration of 70 years of scouting. They chose the 22nd of February because it commemorates the birth of Robert Baden-Powell, the founder of the Scouts. It was a testament to see the kids there delivering speeches and the strength of character that they've learned through the Scouts. So could we have a debate to celebrate the 70 years of the Scouts, to thank the volunteers, the likes of Steve Dowell and his team, who give up their time to support the young people get the skills they need for future life?
Absolutely, I will join him in congratulating the Scout movement for the amazing work they've done over their 70 years. I think it does provide a great opportunity for young people, and I know many of us in this House will have been through that movement. I just want to put on record, I don't think I'm related to the Baden-Powells, but I might be. Maybe I'll have a look into it.
Very important. Yeah, Joe Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The recent announcement that Prado Community High School will be closed for a lengthy period of time due to cracks in the building's infrastructure is a deeply concerning situation, particularly given that the building was only recently opened in 2016. Students that have already experienced vast disruption due to the COVID pandemic deserve stability in their educational experience, and I'm deeply concerned for their welfare. Can the Leader of the House help me secure a meeting with an Education Minister to discuss how the students can receive the best support to ensure their education and upcoming exams receive minimal disruption and they can continue their education in peace?
Well, I'm really sorry to hear of the closure of Prudhoe Community High School in his constituency. This is absolutely devastating for young people in his constituency who will be missing out on education and also time in school and all that brings. I know the Department for Education is working closely with those responsible for the building, but I will absolutely ensure he gets a ministerial meeting.
Deputy Speaker, UK food resilience is more delicate than ever before. The country's ability to withstand future crises has been brought into question by the National Preparedness Commission's recent report. Yet family farms, including the several hundred in Glastonbury and Somerton, that support the provision of the nation's food security, in the words of the NFU President, are taking a battering. So can we have a debate on government time about national preparedness, food security and resilience?
Well, this government is committed to food security, it is committed to farming and our rural communities. We are putting in extra money to support farmers, £5 billion over 2 years, and we've got a 25-year farming roadmap and a new deal for farmers as well. So there's a whole range of measures, but food security is absolutely what underpins our farming plans, and I will make sure that she's updated on these important matters.
Melanie Ward. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Leader of the House may be aware of the ongoing tribunal case of Sandy Penge, a nurse at my local hospital in Kirkcaldy. Women's sex-based rights are hard-fought, and we give them up at our peril. The UK Health Secretary is right to support the need for single-sex spaces and sex-based rights for women in the NHS. And of course, every citizen must be afforded safety, respect and dignity in the workplace. Whilst the Leader of the House may not want to comment on an ongoing tribunal, does she agree with me that single-sex spaces must be protected, and will she make time for a debate on how we can best do this?
Well, she's absolutely right. I won't comment on a particular case, but I absolutely support what she's saying about the importance of single-sex spaces. And this government is very clear that everybody deserves to feel safe and treated with respect at their workplace, and that includes within the NHS, although that is devolved. The Equality Act does apply to Scotland, and it's very clear that within it, rights and protections for women are protected.
Jim Shannon.
Deputy Speaker, in the last 2 months, an increasing number of attacks are taking place in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In the Wera territory, 70 Christians, including women, children and the elderly, were found dead, bound and beheaded in a Protestant church. They were first captured from their homes before being killed by the suspected ADF militants linked to the Islamic State group terror groups who have displayed explicit animosity towards Christians. Since last Christmas, attacks by the ASCAP, M23 and CODECO have killed hundreds, and militants are moving swiftly across the country. So will the Leader of the House press the Minister for immediate and long-term intervention so that the UK Government and international stakeholders can work together to prevent further extremist-led massacres while ensuring sustainability and security and humanitarian support in that region? Thank you so much.
Well, the government remains deeply concerned by the Daesh-affiliated group, allied democratic forces who continue the increased attacks, as he says, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and we will ensure that these messages are relayed very strongly, and I will ensure that the Minister updates him on these matters.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The visit to Scotland by the Prime Minister within 48 hours of the general election was widely welcomed. That priority for Scotland stands in stark contrast with the actions of the Leader of the Opposition, who after 116 days in post still has not ventured north of the border, leaving Scots confused as to whether they should be dismayed or relieved. So will the Leader of the House allocate time for a debate in which we can discuss which party in this House truly stands up for Scotland and for the Union?
Well, I think probably constituents of, like hers should probably be relieved that the Leader of the Opposition perhaps has not yet visited Scotland. But I'm not sure we need a debate, Madam Deputy Speaker, about which party stands up for the interests of Scotland, because I think we're all very clear that's the Labour Party.
Amanda Hack.
Madam Deputy Speaker, last week Ashby Netball Club in my constituency completed 75 hours of non-stop netball at Ivanhoe School. A feat I'm sure you'll agree is well worth applauding by itself. But they also raised £54,000 for Kids Village, which will provide respite holidays for children with critical illnesses. And they also broke 2 world records and setting an entirely new one as well. Would the Leader of the House join with me congratulating Ashby Netball Club and their players from the surrounding community for these incredible accomplishments?
Well, the Honourable Lady told me about this incredible act of charity fundraising by Ashby Netball team. I just couldn't believe that they've played continuously for 72 hours. That is a remarkable achievement. I absolutely join her in congratulating them and wish them the very best in their efforts.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last month, along with approximately 20 other local employers, I attended Cumbernauld Academy's World of Work event, where I was able to engage with over 100 13-year-olds about the skills that you need to be an elected politician, but also how to work for one. It was a crucial part of their preparation for choosing which subjects they wanted to take at National 4 and National 5 level. I really got put through my paces with all of that, and it was an absolutely fantastic event. I want to commend the school for doing that. But I think it's also important that we further debate the importance of careers advice for young people.
Absolutely, I support her in that endeavour and giving young people careers advice. I'm not sure I would necessarily join her in advising young people to want a career in elected politics, but perhaps she could give the training session that she gave to some of her colleagues.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On this day, 125 years ago, the Labour Party was founded by Keir Hardie to be the political wing of the trade union movement and the voice of working class people in this Parliament. Labour has transformed the lives of millions of people since. Does the Leader of the House agree with me that we have another Keir who's transforming lives for working people today, 125 years on from the 27th of February 1900? And will she pay tribute to all our fellow activists over the years?
Well, what a lovely question. Absolutely will support everything that he says. The Prime Minister was named after Keir Hardie, and I think he's absolutely living up to his namesake.
Thank you. Josh Dean.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last month, I met with Colin, who runs The Toaster, a fantastic local cafe on South Street in Bishop Stortford. But Colin's business has been plagued for 3.5 years by a pothole on the street outside. Rainwater collects in the pothole and is then splashed onto his business. Just this week, he's had to clean his shop front 4 times. So will the Leader of the House join me in calling on Hertfordshire County Council to take full advantage of the £35 million provided by this government to fix potholes across Hertfordshire, Hertford and Stortford, and the pothole plaguing Colin's business?
Well, absolutely. He describes, how awful potholes can be and the impact that they have on businesses like Colin's. And I absolutely join him in imploring Hertfordshire Council to use the money that the government's now given them to fix the potholes like the one he describes.
Last question goes to the ever-present and most patient Mark Sewers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We know that mass transit systems have enormous benefits for local economies. In Nottingham, a tram line was able to generate £100 million in investment for local businesses. That's why I'm so pleased that the government has indicated its support for a mass transit system in West Yorkshire and in Leeds, because we have been waiting far, far too long for one. Will the Leader of the House grant a debate in government time on the urgent need to get this mass transit system built in West Yorkshire and Leeds, so that we can have investment in our businesses and benefit from the benefits of economic growth across our region?
Well, absolutely, and I know as the MP and resident of Manchester how absolutely vital these mass transit schemes are to growth, to providing job opportunities, to boosting tourism and everything that Leeds deserves to have. And I'm really pleased that the Chancellor has indicated her support for that. And we have set aside some funding, and we're working with the West Yorkshire Combined Authority to make sure that these plans become a reality.
End of business questions. I'll give the Leader of the House a few moments just to retrieve her papers, and we can swap on the front benches.